I think this time it's real. This is not a drill. Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to ReGroup Night 2. I'm glad that you guys are with us. Glad that we're all together. Let me open us in a word of prayer. Lord, you know where we are. You know, and not only do you know it, but in your sovereignty, you have placed us here. Lord, you know our hearts. You know how badly we need each other. Lord, you know because ultimately we have an ultimate need for you. We were created to know you and to enjoy you forever. Lord, I ask that you would give us wisdom as we proceed, and that you would help us to have humility, to be vulnerable, not just before you, but Lord, to show that by being these things before each other. So Lord, may you make us uncomfortable so that ultimately we may bear fruit for you, that we may love you and love our neighbor well. Not just those inside our faith family, but Lord, those who are outside as well. May we welcome them in as we welcome each other. Lord, thank you that in Christ you bring us together and that nothing can separate us from that. It's in his name we pray. Amen. So guys, before we get started, before King comes up, we would like to show you a video of some things that might kill your group.
I want to talk to you about some threats to your group, some things that I call group killers that if you don't address, they will take out your group. No matter how healthy and strong and vibrant your group is, you have to be on the lookout for these group killers. The first one is inconsistent attendance. If people are spotty in attendance, it will communicate that the group is not a priority. And this will catch on with everybody else. They will soon learn that, hey, coming to the group is completely optional. And if you don't address the topic of inconsistent attendance, before you know it, everybody will become inconsistent in their attendance, and then you won't have a group. The second thing to be on the lookout for is awkward personalities. Now, I'm not talking about like the normal awkward personalities, because we're all a little bit odd. In fact, there's an adage, if you can't identify the weird person in your group, it's because it's you. So we're not talking about just weird people. What we're talking about here is the awkward people that mess up the dynamic of a group. For instance, a dominator, someone who jumps into every conversation, that answers every question, that finishes everybody else's sentences. They always are quick with a word, and they talk loud, and they take over the conversation. You got to be on the lookout for that person. Or the opinionator, the person who always has a thought, an opinion, and typically they're a contrarian to go with being opinionators, and typically they're argumentative as well. And so these people have firm opinions that they loudly proclaim, and then they get in the face of other people in the group. And if you don't look out for the dominator or the opinionator, you will not have a group for long. So be on the lookout for particularly awkward personalities that hurt the group. In fact, the rest of your group will tell you, hey, so-and-so is really bugging me. They won't say it that directly, but they'll say it in a similar manner, and you'll know, I think we have a problem here. Now, the answer is don't get rid of those people, don't kick them out of your group, but lovingly, pastorally talk to them and encourage them and challenge them to act correctly in your group and work as a group to help them behave in healthy manners. The other thing to look out for is fakeness. There's a real problem in church world. Most of us have grown up getting cleaned up and dressed up to go to church. And inadvertently, we got the idea that it's also time to fake it. It's also time to put on a smile, to hide our problems and our struggles. But that kind of fakeness has no place in a group. A group should be a place where people can be authentic and real and honest. And so if you sense that people in the group are being fake, model the way. share your real honest struggles and challenge everybody to do the same. Well, another group killer is just bad curriculum. A discussion guide or a video series that's really not helpful to your group, that bogs your group down, that your group doesn't really like. Simple solution there is just stop doing that curriculum. Just don't use that material. Even if you're 2 weeks into a 6-week run on curriculum, all of your type A, get her done type of personalities will really be frustrated that you're going to stop doing a curriculum. But there's no shame in saying this isn't as helpful as we thought it was going to be. We're going to do something else. And then finally, a lot of good groups are taken out by holidays and summer break. And it's not really that the vacation takes them out, it's the lack of a plan. So as you enter Christmas vacation, as you enter summer vacation, have a plan. This is our last date to meet before the break, and this is the day we're going to meet again. And then you have some communications periodically throughout that break time, so everybody knows this is when we meet again. So those are some simple group killers. They're not real big threats, but as a leader, you need to face them.
I think y'all are probably expecting something funny or whatever, right? It's just not really funny. But the guy, his name is Bill Search, and he writes a lot about small groups. And in fact, we have, for those of you who are group leaders, we have a book that he wrote that we're going to be passing out tonight to group leaders. I will say good evening instead of just jumping straight into that. Let me tell you how good of a day I have. Today, I went and had a quick lunch at Jack's, which is, there's no such thing anymore as a quick lunch at a fast food restaurant, but I tried. And they didn't have any regular straws. They had some of those really big red straws that are for milkshakes. And so whatever, I put it in my cup, and then I got back to my office. I'd got a refill of Diet Dr. Pepper, and it was full to the top of the cup. And I was sitting in my chair, and the ice got a little where I wasn't, so I started doing this and stuck that straw right through the bottom of the cup. And suddenly, I was completely wet in this section. And fortunately, I was in the office by myself for the next 2 minutes. And then Wayne Chapman decided to stop by. And then Vicki decided to stop by. And they saw that the pastor is having problems with the potty training, or so it looked like. So that's not the first time I've done that, by the way. But anyway, that's the kind of day I have been, with a cup, that is. So too much information, perhaps. Tonight we're gonna talk about some. We're going to show a couple of videos. We're going to have a little share time. We're going to break up into groups. We're going to talk about the logistics of our groups, of how we're going to do what we're doing. And some of it's not worked out yet. We are grateful for those of you who filled out surveys. There are some more back there, or like someone said, oh yeah, I put it in my Bible. I've had it with me all week. It'd be nice if we could have that. I mean, if you went to the trouble of filling it out, or if you didn't, you can fill one out that are back. There's still some more on the little hand sanitizer table, so they should be nice and clean, and you can fill those out. If you did not fill one out last week, or you didn't give them to us, please do that. That'll help us. So, a few people have asked still, trying to figure out what this whole thing is about. Are you going to assign us to groups? No. Well, one thing, we can't make you go anywhere. There would be some groups, hey, why don't you go help them start this group? We might do that, or we might try to match some people who might not know others. But it's not our place to make you go anywhere. If we can try to logistically figure out this is a group in this area, these are a group that needs childcare, this is a bunch of old people who don't, or some mix and match. You just think through some of those things. And that's what we're trying to do, but we're not going to make anyone go anywhere. But tonight, we still have a lot of questions to answer. We probably have, I think we'll have, within the next few weeks, 7 groups in addition to 3 women's Bible studies and 1 men's Bible study that are ongoing. We'll have 7 other groups with the possibility of going up to 9 or 10, and some of them are probably a month or 2 away, and we might start and then transition into that. I'm still trying to figure out even what I'm going to do, what some other groups that are maybe on campus are going to do. We have one area where we have a bunch of hosts and 1 leader. So we're trying to, usually it's just the other way around, or maybe we've got hosts and that's a good sign. But So there's some logistics to work out. Some of you are ready just to go meet next week, and you can. That's fine. We'll just say your group is meeting. But one of the things we want to fairly soon is have a roster and a schedule of groups that we can put out on the table, that we can maybe put in the epistle, maybe even on our website or something like that, so that people can find it. We have to be careful with the privacy concerns of giving addresses and numbers and stuff on a website. But we want that up and running, but we also don't want to do something dumb just to start. In other words, plan to succeed and not plan to fail by doing something stupid just to jump it off real quick. Last week, so really the reason for regroup are twofold. To do the why do we do what we do? You hear me say that a lot. Because sometimes we just do it because we've always done it. And one of the things that COVID has done, and the pandemic and the shutdowns and people backing off, is there's an awful lot of people who always did things because they always did things, because mom and them always did them, and it was always done, and then suddenly it got pulled back and we didn't do it, and some people said, I don't know why we do that. I don't like it. It's not any good. I'm not getting anything out of it. I was just doing it because we've always done it. And so some people, sadly, have just given up on it because it was maybe hollow to begin with in church and life and stuff. So getting people back over the hump, there are some good evaluations that we're doing of things that might not be useful to begin with. But I certainly think this is not one of them. We want to think it through and want to think, why do we do what we do? Because your motivation is, those weeks when you don't quite feel like doing it, or when you have other choices and you're trying to prioritize your schedule, it's important that you know why you're doing it. So we want to talk about the why, and then tonight a little bit more about the how. So real quick, we'll review some about the why. Why do we do small groups? And this is the time that you say something back. Why do we do them? Real quick, one sentence, two. It's biblical. Yes, the plant from the back shares that it's biblical. Thank you. Good. We one another. It is the place we do it. It's biblical. There is a biblical precedent for it from the Old Testament to the New. Even Jesus and his 12 disciples, that was a small group. When 3,000 souls were saved at Pentecost and they began meeting in homes, they didn't call them small groups, but they didn't have big homes, and that's what they did. It's just what they did. And it's always been that. And as we've said, it was 4 centuries later, 3.5 centuries later, before there was ever such an animal as a church building. People met in homes. We now own these 2 buildings, but we've owned millions of dollars worth of church buildings for years. We just happen to live in them because we're the church, right? So it's a very practical thing to do that. And the church in the New Testament, what was it? Temple courts, house to house, 2-wing church. That balance, and that's what we want to be. So it's biblical. We want another. It is the most functional and practical way to do it. You can't do it here. What are we going to do in a little bit? We're going to break up, because when we break up and get in a circle, suddenly you can interact together. No interaction when you're looking at the back of someone's head. So it is a place, and the one another, which we just touched on a little bit last week, is so very important because I grew up in a church that had nominating committees. Everybody know what that is? A little nominating committee, and somebody comes in the summer and gets committee and fills up all the roster spots. Who's going to teach these things and all that? And then we would do spiritual gift inventories every once in a while. And it's like, wait, those things don't match the nominating committee's spots. There's a ton of things that I might have a gift to do that doesn't fit in this box. And so really church happens all the time when those gifts, most of which don't fit in the roster spots, are opportunities for you to serve. And that's the one anothering, for you to encourage one another, pray for one another, stimulate one another to love and good deeds, edify one another, bear one another's burdens. And all those things require relationships, and usually small. The spiritual gifts and genuine biblical service is going to be relational. I love Sunday morning worship, but with a few exceptions of coming and going, it's not very relational. It's not meant to be. So it's biblical and it's functional, practical, one another. What else? Anybody else? See, I had a little outline here, and she did number 1, and then she did number 2, and he did number 3. And I didn't plant anybody. I'm just so happy. I'm just like, it's better than pouring stuff in your lap at lunch. But yeah, it's the absolute best environment to do. It's purposeful, what we're about, and that is to make disciples. And how? Why is that, Jason? Ooh, talk about sin. I want to be in his group. No, not really. No, that's right. Face-to-face stuff. Discipleship happens in interpersonal things. It is supernatural. It's biblical. It's grounded in the Scripture. But it's when we're rubbing against one another. It's when we're bouncing off one another. And you said, I think you said something about accountability, supporting each other. That's where discipleship happens. And you don't get that in a big crowd. So if our calling, Acts 2:42 through 47 talks about the blueprint of the church. Matthew 28, 18 through 20 is the Great Commission, which ultimately is about making disciples, and that's where they are to be. So that's the why we would do what we do. But let me ask you one question tonight, and I want you to be real with this one. Why, and don't answer with one of those, okay? Why do you want to be in a small group? Why do you give the time and attention and effort, a night of your week, to be in a small group? To be connected to other people, okay? It's family. It'd be like asking, why do you go to Thanksgiving dinner, except for the food part, but or why do you, why do you go hang out and see your grandkids or something? It's family, good. To study God's Word. There's a certain degree, Karen, where I could say, but you can do that at home. And you can, but you don't get the benefit of the one another's and their experience and their direction. And we're not talking about somebody lecturing you. We're talking about people with different perspectives and experiences and the filter it runs through their life to you. That's good. Yeah, that's a good, fruitful is a good part of that. I heard someone else speaking up. Yeah. Yeah, to be grounded and find encouragement, and some of it is to be reinforced. One of the reasons, now some people, y'all meet on Monday night, some groups have met Sunday nights, and there's nothing, zero, nada magical about Wednesday night. That didn't say there in the book of Acts, and they met every midweek on the Wednesday night or whatever. There's a lot of church history that we've done that. I like it, and let me tell you why. Because there is a place in the middle of the week where you come in from out of the craziness and you get in with a group of folks, because sometimes that's the best thing we got going, because it is a sicko world. I mean, we're hearing so many lies, and just to come into our little catacomb of our little living room sit with other believers and realize, wait, and to say, that's not the real world. That's the almost unreal world. We're getting real when we come together. So to come in out of the unreal world to the real world for a short time is a really cool thing to do, and find people to, like, the passage we looked at last week from Hebrews chapter 10, it says, since we've, been through all this together, it says, let us hold unswervingly to the hope that we profess, for he who promised is faithful. And one of the ways we do that is we come together and you tell me something. Hey, we got hope here. We repeat the gospel. We repeat the hope a little bit. Because there's a lot of weeks, as much as I know it, it sure is nice to just to get those messages bounced off of one another. Now, the way we would, in a way, now some of you come to church type things because of guilt and obligation. It's been grounded in you your whole life. You ought and you should, and you're responsible, and you want to be faithful, don't you? And those are good motivations. No, the faithful part. But the rest of it is such that in time that'll wear out, and you'll just say, no, I'm not going to go through that. It doesn't work in the long run. It's not about beating you over the head that if you were a real good Christian, you should do it. Ought and should, as much as sometimes you ought and should, is not what gets you here. The other side is that we generally would sell something like small groups or anything that we have in the life of the church, or really in any business or anything else, by trying to extol the benefits, right? This is why you should come, because you'll find support, encouragement, you'll find truth, and it's going to benefit you, right? It's good for you. Church, it does a body good, or whatever else, right? That's the ad campaign. But what if we switched the paradigm and we turned it over? And what if we said, in the light of the gospel, that it's not really about you? What if we said that even to go to a group, as much as you might get something out of it, it's not just about you going and being a consumer at one other place and take, because that's what most people do in church and everything else. That's one of the struggles of the modern church, is we've turned it into consumerism, so we're trying to really outsell the other church. Last week, the Montevallo BCM did a 5-church progressive supper Friday night. So there's 5 different courses. I don't even know how they got 5, but we had one of them here, and we hosted them and fed them, and Jonathan and I were working kind of what we might do, and it's like really what we got down to, and we finally discussed it and we laughed about it, is we were not just trying to attract them, we were trying to beat the other 4 churches. We're trying to make ourselves more appealing to those college students than they are. And so really what we decided instead was just to say bad things about them instead of worried about it. Now that's a joke. I didn't really do that. So, but that's really what we do. This is what will be helpful to you if you'll do this. But if we switched that and said, this is going to give you an opportunity to give, to pour your life out into others, to make disciples, to serve. In a consumer society, that's not real appealing. In kingdom life, there's a difference. And that's what we want to buy into. So I hope that you will buy into that. What we're selling is you an environment where you can go live out and act out your faith as the way Jesus did. That's the hope. And to serve others while you're being served, and to give your life away. And, a lot of times we come in with needs. I used to meet somebody for lunch just about every week, and you could tell about 2 minutes in which one of us was the needy one. Like sometimes I'd go over there and it's just like, and it was like, okay, you spend the next 30 minutes and encourage me, right? And some weeks I would go in and think, I'm the needy one. I know I'm the needy one today, and he's going to encourage me. And I'd go in and he would start. It's like, ooh, okay, today it's my day to give after all. I just thought I just poured something in my lap, but he had it a lot worse, right? So, but when you take it that way in church life and you start seeing not what can I get out of this deal, but what can I give into it? And I want to challenge you to look at that a little different in that way. That's the why we do small groups, to give you a chance to do that, to invest in others, to build relationships, to share community, to make disciples. So the question we want to ask tonight is the how. And what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about this for a little bit, and then we're going to pass out some sheets that are going to be kind of our tentative order and see where each of you might be. And then at the end, we're going to kind of break up into those tentative groups, or at least some version of that, and talk about what might happen from here. And then some of the groups might be ready to kick off next week, and some might not. So we asked the why. The question then is the how. And I have 8 questions for each of our groups for how we're going to do this. The first question is this: when is the group going to meet? You need to know that. We have to answer that question. The day, what time of day, what day of the week. If possible, it probably should be the same time every week. We can publish that. It can be predictable, depending on the families involved, work schedules, children. You got to think through that decision. You can't go too late if you have small children. That might change some things. If you have families with children and youth, you probably will want to do a group on Wednesday night, because you can drop the kids off and you can drop the youth off and then maybe get back to your area. But you don't have to do that. But we would like to include all that in the handout. So I want you to be thinking through, one, what's the schedule that's going to best fit for you? And what's the best schedule if you're going to host a group or lead a group? What time, when is the group going to meet? What time and what day? Usually 6:30 or 7 works. Some people have dinner in their group, so they have to do it a little earlier. What time do y'all meet when y'all do dinner? 6:15, when people can get there from crazy day at work or something. And so we moved our group, the one that met here, we moved for the summer to coincide with the youth. So we met at 6:30, suddenly we met at 7, just for the long enough time because the youth were here and people had to drop youth off. So think about that. Second question, where's the group going to meet? Now we have about 10 people who are willing to host, and they go from Helena to Montevallo and Calera, on both sides of Calera, down 31 or down 70. So we have a lot of different areas, and hopefully some that are fairly close to you. If you're dropping off kids or youth on Wednesday night, you probably don't want to go more than 5 or 10 minutes away so you can get back. That's a factor. But you obviously, if you're still thinking about that, you need a home large enough to fit 8, 12 adults that can gather in a room. If there's children, you might think about where you're going to put them. And even for that matter, if you don't have children yet, but your next door neighbor who has children and you invite them to come, you better think through that. You better have a place for them. So where's the group going to meet? What time, what day, what time, where? Thirdly, who is going to lead and co-lead the group? Right now we've got about 8 or 9 people who are willing to lead or co-lead. Some of them can't do it until November. One of them is currently leading a life group and saying they can't do it until the life group is over. But we'll probably start with 6 or 7. Now, the key is this. We would really love to start each group with a leader and at least some version of a co-leader, what we call it, or an apprentice leader. And even if you don't, we want you investing in one of them for every reason. For one, somebody gets sick or you got on vacation, you have someone ready to lead. The other reason is ideally our groups will be multiplying, launching new groups. And as we do that, it's a natural bond to have someone from that group to maybe take another family. We did this for years. We'd start a new group in the year, turn it over to someone else. We would leave with someone and go start another group. And you keep doing that, but you've got to have other people in place to lead. So we want to identify possible leaders, invest in them, encourage them if they're a little shy or not sure about it. That can work out in time, but that's a key part of this. When you get to about 10 adults regularly, the group probably needs to consider multiplying and maybe 10 or 12 or 14, it gets too big for people to share, and that's a great time for you to launch into another group. We could do it a year from now. We could do it in mid-year, probably not in December at Christmas time, as he was talking about that. That's the trouble. Question number 4, what will we study? This seems to be an ongoing question. He brought up the curriculum, and sometimes you pick some bad ones. You can maybe go through just a Bible book. Somebody's going through Crazy Love, the book by Fran Chan. You can, y'all are doing sermon discussions. I've heard, we used to do that. It was always awkward when I did it with my group, when I preached it. It was because, but you can take the content from, you got a sermon sheet, you can use the content, bounce it off of it, criticize it, talk about what you think is different or how you can live it out. But the idea is always interactive discussion, not lecturing, that everyone talks, everyone shares, and the group leader is a facilitator of discussion, asking the right questions and those kind of things so that we could grow in our understanding of Scripture and do that one another ministry that we talked about. So there's lots of options. We could even provide materials if someone needed something like that. But there's a lot of studies. Look, we got the internet. There's so many options just to borrow from on there if you need to do that. The 5th question is, what are we going to do with children? Some groups don't have that to worry about. Most, in some way, do. I have been to conferences all over the country. I've been to churches that did small groups. It's been a passion of mine for 30 years. I've read so many books on it. I'm just trying to tell you all this to impress you. But mainly I'm trying to tell you this to say, nobody's ever figured this one out. How do you do children? It's always the fly in the ointment. I hate to say that kids are a pain, but in this part, it becomes that. And now some people believe in multi-generational groups, and the kids come in and they experience the full thing the whole time. Sometimes if you got really little ones, you can hold them and pass them around, but when they start getting a little toddling age and they become a disruption, it comes to the point that you just as well stay at home as take your kids and try to wrangle them the whole time. For those who have kids that are in elementary school age or youth, doing Kid Jam, what used to be W3, Kid Jam or youth group, is a reasonable and good plan for you on a Wednesday night if you can pull that off. But kids are very vital. If you want to do a rotation of child care, tag team, somebody gets it once a month, or pay someone to do child care, that's something even that we might want to discuss as a church, that we can give some stipends or something to help with child care for your group. You got to find somebody to do it. You can't hire one of your group members or something. That kind of becomes a profit game. But just to try to equip you to do that as best you can. But think through that. If you're a group of, say, old people like me, and your group doesn't have it. We did this several years ago. We had a group that met at our house, and all of a sudden somebody was interested in coming, and they had little kids, and we weren't remotely prepared for it. And by the way, we did small groups. We've been doing small groups for 30 years, so you can figure out, we used to have small groups with 6 of our own kids in the house, and a very small backyard and a very small house, and another 5 or 6 kids from other people, and no W3 and all that stuff. So we've been there and done that, and it's hard. There are no easy solutions. For those of you who have elementary kids, that sure is helping now. But let's always think through that. And if you are older and you don't have kids and you're not planning on it, you've just invited people elsewhere, and all of a sudden somebody moves in next door and they got 2 kids and you got a chance to reach them, somebody needs to keep kids. Whatever you need to do, that needs to be a priority for you. Number 6, who are we going to invite to the group? Now, that's something that you all should be thinking. Now, I'll first say, you see how many people are in here, and then you see how many people are here on a Sunday morning. That's a pretty good bit of folks, some of whom you sit beside every week and haven't met, or you hadn't seen, or maybe you're in a life group with them, that you can invite them. They're friends. There are people in your neighborhood that you can reach out to. That's one of the benefits of it being in a neighborhood as opposed to in a church building. Now, there's usually two methods, two ways to get into a church. Either you come to the large group first, and you sneak in the back. We had a family here first time Sunday. They're not here tonight, so I still wouldn't want to embarrass them. They came in and they sat on the back. You could tell they were like guarded. Nobody was behind them, and they were, it's the first time in. And because it's a scary thing. And then I don't know if they'll be back. But if people are friendly and they're content, and the pastor's not talking about somebody killing his daughter and all that stuff, they may come back. And so that's the entryway into church life. And eventually, what we say often is we invite them to a life group. They get into some version of community, a little Bible study, make a few friends, get to know someone's names. Maybe you take them to lunch. And there's build a little bit of relationship, and then into groups from there. Some people, it's just the opposite. They wouldn't dare come in here with a bunch of strangers, but they'd come over to your house for barbecue, maybe sit down for lunch. Maybe come over and, we're having a Bible study? Yeah, okay, it's a little weird, but I'll try that. And then they get to know a few people, and they go, these people aren't so bad. And then after a while, they might want to come to worship with us then. So there's two different avenues through which people get involved. So I want you to be thinking about those folks outside that you can be inviting, as well as the people within here. Now, again, we're not trying to harass people and beat them over the head and come to our group, and you don't get stars and free donuts or anything like that if you get the most. But if we really genuinely care about people, then we want to reach out to them in that way. Number 7, how long will the group last? It's a question we haven't asked much. The answer is not forever and ever, amen. Now, we don't put expiration dates on our groups, but we probably should. And just to kind of make sure they mix up here or there or launch a new group or whatever, to make sure they don't get too inwardly focused, and to encourage people to just the DNA of the group to be launching new groups. This is not a guilt thing. It's just when you start thinking in that direction, it changes your approach to doing group life. And it also just keeps your group fresh, and it keeps you excited about the group. I'll tell you this, if you have the same folks for 6 or 7 months and all of a sudden somebody brings a visitor, just tell me how much different your group is that night. It just changes everything, just the dynamic of that. So when you're constantly, openly doing that, that helps you to think in those terms. So we're not, if your group is flourishing, the last thing we want to do is shut it down. Some of them will just have a natural life cycle. People will move out. Somebody got mad and left the church. Somebody did this, and suddenly you got 3 people left. We'll absorb it. We'll have a regroup next year, and you can jump in another one. We'll start over. And that's okay. Some of them just have a natural life cycle like anything else. But just to think that we're not here forever in that particular group. Number 8, finally, what are we going to do for outreach? A lot of times we really like to focus on community. We're just going to have a big group hug and sing Kumbaya and love each other, and we're going to one another all the time. But there's not a focus outwardly. And I'm talking about it, maybe you go join together and work at the firehouse one Sunday night. Maybe you join on Saturdays and go down to Grace Klein and distribute food. Maybe you go to the park and meet one night and have a cooler full of water and give them to people who are out walking their dogs. Start some conversations, gospel conversation. Maybe you have somebody in your neighborhood who's, you know all the possible needs, and who knows how the Lord might lead. But when you start thinking missionally, you start thinking outside of your box instead of just how are we going to all hang out together. I'm telling you, it changes the dynamic of your group completely when you do that. And I hope that you will consider how you might think in those terms from the beginning. Make that a part of the DNA of your group of how you're going to do that. Now, we're going to be, we looked at the video on group killers a while ago. So tonight we want to talk about first we want to talk about how we can start a group. And this is basics, but we're going to show this video real quick. and then we will get back to talking about how our groups logistically are going to maybe break up. So watch a 2-minute video here, and then we'll get going from there.
Every great small group starts with a first meeting. So I want to talk to you about how to get ready for your first small group meeting. The first thing you need to do is you need to pray. You need to ask God's blessing. You need to ask God to help everybody show up to the group, and that the right people would show up, and that the group would go well. And then you need to prepare. You need to prepare the environment. Now you've obviously hosted things before, but this is different. This means you have to maybe rearrange the furniture. Instead of just having it the way you normally have it, you need a circle. You need to make sure everybody has a seat, and that the temperature's comfortable, and that there's adequate lighting so people can read their Bibles and see each other. And once people arrive or begin to arrive, make sure you meet them at the door. Don't just yell from the other side of the door, "Come on in." Make sure that you meet them at the door, that you greet them, you say hello, you tell them how glad you are that they are there, and give them a name tag. The first handful of group meetings, it's important to wear name tags. That avoids that whole awkward, what's their name again? Because you really don't want to keep asking that. So have name tags. Well, once most people have arrived, about 15, 20 minutes in, and it's possible that at your first group meeting, not everybody will show up. So at about 15, 20 minutes, get everybody to circle up in their seats and begin the process of having a group. And what I recommend is an icebreaker. In fact, my favorite icebreaker is this. If you were given free tickets and a time machine to see any concert in the history of humanity, who would you go see? It's a fun question. It doesn't have to be that one, but ask some question that will get the ball rolling so people get to know each other around the circle. And once you've done that, you could have a brief discussion, but the focus of that first meeting is just building connections with each other and getting to know each other. Keep an eye on the time, and when it's about 15 minutes, when your group's about to close, make sure everybody knows, well, hey, it's been a great group, but we want to honor the commitment that we made that this thing would last for a couple of hours, and then close in prayer. And hey, if people want to stay around for another hour or two, that's up to you and them. But at least the people that are real time sensitive and need to go, those people feel that they're comfortable and that they can go. And by the way, congratulations, you've now had your first official group meeting.
Feel better now, don't you? Right. So if you had a time machine and 2 tickets to any concert, no, that was his icebreaker. Anybody, who would you go see? Chris Cornell. I don't even know who that is. So, okay, I do know who that is. I do know exactly who that is. And never mind, I forgot that. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. I was not even trying to sound spiritually pastoral. I just forgot his name. Who else? U2 and Rush. I've seen Rush. I could tell you about a lot of concerts before 1980. And then I did see Pink Floyd in like 1994. But that was because somebody gave me free tickets the day of, and I went to Legion Field and saw them. But another story, just move on from that at this point. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to distribute these sheets, and they're going to kind of give us some logistical ideas of who we're going to be. Just give me one of Since we had some folks who are missing tonight who were here last week, there's probably enough for just about one for everybody. And we want to talk through some of this stuff just to kind of get an idea. And then we will break up into some versions of some groups and kind of go from there. By the way, I just needed to report to everybody that Jan Fuller was once on Romper Room for a full week. And it's her birthday. I didn't even know that. Happy birthday, Jan. Jan watched on the live stream last week because she can't be here. And she said, because I did a shout out in the middle, that's the first shout out she's ever got, but she was on Romper Room for a full week. And I said, well, we can't compete with that, but now I've told everybody that she was there. Well, happy birthday, Jan, if you're watching, and if you're not, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. All right, these are our tentative small groups based on what we've heard. If someone would like to jump in and volunteer another one, we're all good with that too. The first group, by the way, you see, let me turn your attention to the very bottom to begin with, and you might want to fill some things in there's some pins in the back if you need that. These are kind of under the umbrella of our small groups, but aren't fully in the community group mode. The adult Bible studies, there are 3 women's groups and 1 men's group. 2 of those groups, 1 men and 1 women's, are Zoom only right now. And if you would like to be a part of that, that's either Skip or Carol that lead those on Tuesday and Thursday night. Amanda Watson will be starting a women's Bible study group, this time in her home. They have met up here some, but they'll be at her home starting in October for a couple hours. And Karen, when do y'all start? Okay, in about 3 weeks, on a Tuesday, 3 weeks from yesterday, the Grateful Hearts group, which is a women's group, meets in the church office over there in the middle of the afternoon on Tuesdays. So those groups, are kind of different, but also at the same time, they're still a part of our church in that way, but they're specific to those things. The rest of our groups, we would hope, would be more family inclusive in that way. All right, we'll look at the top. The first group is, and you see down there the asterisk that to include young children. That's not to say the other ones don't, but there were some people said, we want a group with young children right off the top. So these are what we know will be there. The Hodges will be hosting. Y'all live in Savannah Point, correct? And that's right. Is that Calera or Alabaster? Okay, so it's just, but it's right on the line, basically, right down Smoky Road there. And what time do you all have a general idea of a time that you would be shooting for, or a day and time? No? Okay. Wednesday from 6:30 to 8, because Jason would be leading the group, and he's got kids and youth, so you can fill that in. That's Wednesday from 6:30 probably to 7:55 or something like that. And so that group, we already have a few families that we know are planning to kind of be a part of that. And those are, honestly, it's going to be, at this point, well, it's funny, we started a group several years ago when the Hodges first got involved, and it was me and Nan and one other couple in their early 20s. And then we ended up with another couple of old people like us, and then another couple of the Hodges. And so at any given point, there were like three couples that were younger 20s and 3 in their mid-50s into their 60s. And at any given point in the group, someone was rolling their eyes, all the time. So it was like one of those commercials about being like your dad all the time in that group. So anyway, so this group will be kind of aimed at young couples, but I'm sure they'll let old people come if you know the secret handshake or something like that. So the Preston's group has met at the Preston's home. This is a group that's kind of already existed, but will continue. Joel Wallace will be leading that. I know the Mayhews are in that and planning to stay in that, and I don't know if anyone else. But that group meets in Stone Creek, which is the road over, what's that called, 2012, which is just right over at the light. You take a left, and that group would be Wednesday night, time-wise, 6:30 to 8. Okay. Kids. You don't have any preschoolers currently. You haven't. Everybody now has promoted up and it's in W3. Kid jam. I occasionally do drawing. Not prize drawing. Artistic. I'm using artistic very loosely. Sometimes we have a whiteboard and it's a little like dictionary or something. I've got to kind of guess what's drawing. Well, I think people. It sounds to me like people are going to be flocking to that group now. Yeah, Ronnie, you might want to fill out another form and. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that sounds like some creative Bible teaching. You see the J Pikes because there's an M Pikes down below, which is kind of on hold for now, but that's Jared. You live in Forest Hills, is that what it's called?
Yes. So if you're going down 12, there's a field with a horse and a donkey.
Joel, would you draw that for us so we'll know what it? Okay. And if you don't, we all think you're absolutely nuts, right? But that's 6, 7 minutes, 5, 6, 7 minutes away. Write down that. But you all meet on Monday nights around 6:15. We heard earlier to 8, and you all have dinner. Okay. Okay. That sounds, well, at least part of that sounded very biblical, the seamless transitions. By the way, I would certainly advocate that in the life of a group, seamless transitions. Some of us have been taught in church life things like opening in prayer, which I certainly believe in prayer and praying for your group, but where we're really in really good discussion and everybody's talking, and then you open in prayer and everybody shuts down. We've been taught to do that. So that's the Sunday school way, right? So if you're a good leader, you get a good discussion going, and they don't even know that they're already into the group, and you've sneaked it in on them, and they keep checking their watch, wondering, when are we going to get to it? And they're halfway through the discussion, and then you spring the Bible on them. That's a good technique I've used. But anyway, but to just because, listen, when we've been taught with a Greek learning system that's largely lecture kind of a mindset, so you start and end, but the familial way of doing this, of around the table and sharing life, and it just comes up. This is where one anothering happens far more than starting and stopping. Now, my group, I can't ever get them to shut up for us to get into things like that, but it's usually really good fellowship, even if we don't do anything else. The Shimzak group is going to be, did I get that close? Or Simzak. I've been saying it wrong all this time. Jarman Nikita's group is going to be, it's basically a new group that kind of has come out of another one that's down 70 in Waterford at their home, Wednesday nights at 6:30. And they're going to be studying Crazy Love. But it's not meeting next week, but they already are planning to meet 2 weeks hence on the 15th. So if you'd like to be a part of that, that would be great. The next group is Cotton's. Todd and Sandy have offered to kind of host. They live in Navajo Hills right off of 95 in Alabaster, not too far down from like the library or where industrial is in that area. And not sure yet about a night, or that's still in the works of trying to, or Josh? Okay. 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 So that's still kind of trying to figure that out when. Dinner will be served. There'll be several weeks of leftover pizza until that runs out. So and cookies. All right, dinner's good. Now, the next little thing down, if you're interested in being a part of a group that Todd might lead, and in that general area, if geographically that fits, talk to him, because I think y'all are just looking for input about a good night. Somebody said Tuesday would be great for me. That might be just enough to make the decision, okay? The next group really is not even a group, but what we have is some hosts Yeah, the McDowells have offered, Tim last week said he might be interested in hosting some, at least some, the Ralphs. And the Ralphs and McDowells and a few families have been in a group before, and they hosted. And then Derek said that, who lives not too far down the road too. And that's really all in the generally Helena, Alabaster, right on the Helena Alabaster line up 95 in that area. So, and we're not too far from that either, and that's something that we might be involved in, trying to find a time. You all used to meet on Sunday nights, but that's not necessarily a deal now like it was because of work-related stuff. So if that's something, if you live in that general area and you'd like to be a part of that, that would be great. The church campus, let me just tell you the scenario the best I can explain. And Mark and I just briefly talked about it a while ago. I've been leading that group for a few years. It's a group that used to meet and it stopped for a while and then it was meeting. And it's mainly made up of people who drop kids off and have too far a drive back to go back, so they just stay here. So we, as much as philosophically we would like our groups to meet in homes, logistically it just works better for them to drop kids off and then have a place here. So we meet here. We've met upstairs back in the summer because we had kids in that area. We met in this area, and that's still a possibility. And Travis he walks up and down the stairs every week, which was a sight to see by itself. So, but we have several folks who've been a part of that. We've just never been able to get someone else who would be ready to lead, so I could move on and maybe start another group. But Mark Young has been leading a group that kind of has transitioned from Zoom and had some, that was kind of the, what do you call it, Stagecoach Trace group. And so Mark has been on campus because he's got a teenager in the youth group, and he's been doing Zoom from over there on campus, to, among others, for Jan, who continues to need that. And so he would like to stay here, so we might transition these two groups together, or we might, we're trying to figure that out. We might just have one over here and one over here and do two in the same time. So we're trying to work all that out. The last one you see there is the Marty Pikes group. He's willing to host and even co-lead a group, but it will be November before he can do that. I found that out late this afternoon because of he's actually going to retire, and he's got a bunch of things going on, so he won't be accessible to do that until that time. So I know there's a few other people who have suggested that they might be able to co-lead a group or help out with a group. Anybody got anything you want to add or suggestions or saying, hey, we could do a group at our house or whatever else? And by the way, we don't have to lock it all in. This is fluid. In a month, if you want to start a group, we can add another group. If we start a group and we realize there's 16 people in a group and it starts too big already, then we can start another group out of that within a few weeks. So any thoughts, ideas? Anybody? So y'all's group, will it next week? And yours is still going? And yours, y'all need to talk about it next week or whatever, okay? I know Jarmus, 2 weeks. So some of this, we just want to make sure we communicate well, but since we're kind of in the iffy stage, we want to do the best we can with some of that. So step out and kind of meet some folks. And this is what we want to do tonight as we kind of bring this time to a close, and that is to kind of break up into your group. If you don't have a group, kind of just think about some of the people that might work from what you just saw from this schedule. So if you lived in the Helena, Alabaster area and wanted to get involved in that group, you might join with the Starch, Rouse, McDowell's, maybe with the Cottons in that way, because that might fit since they're fair. Y'all are pretty close. We're all really in that same circle. So if you don't know where, just jump in with somebody. We're going to break up in about 2 minutes, and then there's not as many of us tonight, so let's see. Well, no, we won't make you by numbers. Just get in the group where you might be with whoever is there. All right? Break up. Quick insight, even a mediocre insight. Anybody got a mediocre insight?
Show and tell.
Show and tell. Good, 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 good. Simple. We're making disciples, and Jesus has set the tone for the way we do it by not being served, but being servers ourselves. And so, one of the struggles when you start breaking people up into groups or making people change is sometimes you start thinking about my little thing, you're messing up my thing, right? So this is all about thinking outside yourself and trying to take on the attitude of Jesus and living that way. I am appreciative of each of you. I hope there's a lot of people who were here last week who did not make it back tonight. We were just kind of counting some of those that we were missing. So get a chance to speak to them, invite them to your group or others. Let them know what's going to be going on, and we'll try to communicate that too. We're not going to announce like this week, these are where all the groups are next week, because we're not quite settled on some of that. But hopefully within a couple of weeks we will be. Jared's going to be helping to coordinate that. We're going to be asking our group leaders to kind of be a little bit accountable in terms of keeping us posted so we can know how we're following up with that, and maybe even doing a little bit more, even things like administratively to kind of keep a handle on them than we've maybe done in the past. So group leaders, we have a little book for you to take home and read and do a book report on, and just a resource. And just because if you broke up this tonight into a certain group, you're not obligated to that one, but it was just something for the night, and we will go from there. With that, it's 8 o'clock. If you have little ones, you want to go deliver the child care workers. If you have kids over in Kid Jam, go let them go too. And if you're on the live stream, thank you for watching. Good night and God bless. All right.